the first big thing for me, and it's been a revelation for me that I think God has just brought to me in recent months, is this idea that what we're trying to build in the church. We're trying to build churches that are reconciled. We're trying to build churches that are more united, and that you almost want your generation and the generations to come after you to be more united in these areas than previous generations have been. And so that might mean doing some stuff around history, might be doing some stuff around theology, but you want to be more reconciled. And I think that's the big hope. Partly it's the big hope because that's where the grace is. That's where God's at work. And then I've come up with this thing called a pathway to peace. Peace being, the point where the relationships are at one. That's what I mean by peace. And so I've come up with 4 things, and I'm not very good at these kind of, although I do alliterations all the time because I'm a preacher. That's what I do. Everything has to have an alliteration. And so my alliteration for my pathway to peace is the first thing that I think we need to do is we need to engage. Oh, brilliant. Someone's going to share something on the screen. We need to engage with the issue. And this is for some a place of humility. And for others, this is a place of trust. And it's, in the Bible, it talks about when one part suffers, we all suffer. And you'll know that if your finger hurts, your whole body feels it. And so when one part suffers, we all suffer. And so we need to engage with these issues. And therefore, we need to overcome our natural tendency to think it doesn't matter. They're just oversensitive, blah, 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 blah. We just need to engage. And engaging in and of itself can be a deep encouragement for Black people when people genuinely are trying to engage, genuinely trying to understand. So I think the first thing is you just need to engage. And that is like, okay, I'm gonna get my head into this. I'm gonna engage with it. And then quickly alongside that, you need to educate yourself. And so I've thrown out all sorts of things, and you can go and check them all out because this is not just me making it all up. And educate is really about the place of openness and understanding. And the Apostle Peter had to educate himself around these issues. I also think part of education that there is a revelation that comes that God brings to us about stuff. And so educate can take many different forms. You can read books, you can watch movies. If you've got friends, you can talk to them, but don't overly quiz them, but where in relationship conversations happen, let them happen. But you can do many things simply to educate yourself. Just go on Wikipedia. You can just educate yourself on this part of history and realize, oh, okay, I hadn't realized these things were going on. I didn't know how this worked. And again, you need to do that. You need to just be mindful of how you do it, because these things can be quite deep and heavy and uncomfortable. And I understand that. And so you can't, no one's asking you to spend the next, 2 years of your life reading every book. But there might be some things that you can do. And then I think if you engage and you educate yourself, you can come to a place of empathy. And for me, empathy only comes about if you have some level of understanding. Empathy is not, sometimes we think we're empathizing when what we're doing is engaging. Yeah. When you begin to start asking questions and you start going, oh, right. Yeah. Didn't realize that. That is engagement. Empathy can only really come when there is a level of understanding, and you can never fully understand, but you can understand enough to go, oh, okay. I'm just beginning to recognize it. And the thing that I really want to push people to, the church to, is to find common understanding of history, because it's not as complicated as it might appear. We just need to fill in some gaps in the history story. But, if I were to ask all of you on this call now to write down, just write me a paragraph about the Holocaust, I can imagine that all of your writings would be very similar. I mean, I'm sure some of you might write better than others, but your understanding of the history and the facts of that history would be very similar because it's a known history. This is a history that is not fully known. And so some people would write nothing and some people could write pages. And yet I do think there is a common understanding of history that we can have. And that brings you to a place of empathy, and empathy is a place where you can begin to reconcile. And I'll tell you what happens, because this has been my experience. When I've talked to people who have begun to show understanding, that has been healing for me. That even that process I've realized is quite healing, and allowing people the safe space to be able to talk can be healing for them, where they feel like, oh, can I say stuff here and without offending you? You know, I've just got some questions to ask. I don't want, you know, because nobody wants to think of themselves as being racist, and you might have some genuine questions, and you need to find those safe spaces where you can ask those questions. So engage, educate, empathize, and encourage is the place of partnership. And in my mind, what the two passages I've got there, Acts 9 and Acts 11, are basically the story of Barnabas. If you remember, the Apostle Paul, he ends up, you know, after he becomes a Christian and everyone thinks this man's mad, he ends up having to go away for a period of time. And then Barnabas goes to Antioch, where there's a church that's beginning to grow and beginning to develop. And he goes off and he gets Paul and he brings him back and he makes a way for him. He makes a way for him. And for me, the encouragement is the place of partnership and hope. It's where you make a way for people. It's where you help people come through. And, you know, in years to come, you guys are going to, you know, probably hold some big jobs in big places, and you're going to carry influence. Make a way for people when you do that. Be a Barnabas, be an encouragement. Get behind others. Don't, you know, Barnabas ended up making a way for a guy who completely overshadowed him. But it was right that he did that. And so you might want to think about, where am I on this journey? And then take yourself one place back, because that's what normally happens. Engage, place of humility and trust. Educate, it's a place of openness and understanding. Empathize is the place of reconciliation, where we come together. And encourage is the place of partnership and hope.